What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Coach to Coach podcast. I am joined, as usual, by my bro, Joe Brooks. My name is Kevin Turner, and today we're going to do a little bit of a catch up, discuss some of our wins, which is something we're going to be trying to do a little bit more regularly. Just talk about one positive thing that happened to us in the week, and then we'll get into a topic, prep. Just a couple things on prep. And Joe, you're going to be kind of leading that because leading the questions being asked because you have not gone through a competition prep and I have. So, we'll just kind of frame it that way. Just whatever questions you have about competition prep, I can answer as to my experience and, what I do with clients. Right. So what's going on with you? How you doing? Catch me up.
Yeah, I'm good. I wasn't on last week's pod, so this is like a 2 week catch up. But
Yeah.
yeah, training. Honestly, I think this was probably my week of training. As far as like feeling goes, the way that the weight was moving, feeling, after leading up to that deload, I was feeling pretty beat up. I think it came right at a perfect time, and then just since then, we're like 2 weeks into it's still the same training setup 4 days a week, but you've added some movements, you've taken some movements out. Um, but like no huge changes to the setup. Um, yeah, that's kind of it's just been the same grind. Like still just killing the workouts, killing the cardio, eating the meals. We've kept the diet the same pretty much for 3 weeks. Letting my weight consolidate, but yeah, I hit um I hit 90-pound dumbbells for the first time ever on incline dumbbell
Yeah. Hell
bench
yeah.
press, and I don't know, I smoked it. It took everything for me to not scream in the gym with excitement, but that's the heaviest I've ever gone. The target rep range was 6 to 8. Hit them for 7. Second set, I was a little anxious. I was a little bit excited, so I didn't rest as long, and I got 5. But between the two sets, it's still an average of 6. So like I'll take it, but noted for next time, just actually take my full rest period. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be huge with dumbbells. Like, is just because you're not only like a machine, you just get into a machine and go. Like with a dumbbell, you have the whole component of like picking the fucking thing up and getting it into place and then kicking it into place. And so you want to make sure you're well rested coming into that. And that's something with dumbbells that at a point when you start getting up over 100-pound dumbbells, you might actually have the strength to press these things, but you may not have the skill set to get them in place because getting them into place when these dumbbells get big and kind of awkward and heavy, it is a skill in and of itself. So you need to have like your setup and how you kick these things into place. You should have that dialed, because that is really what's going to allow you to continue progressing with the dumbbells. And even at some point, like if you get heavy enough with dumbbells, you may need to have somebody hand them off to you. But that's something that is absolutely worth developing as a skill, is the skill of kicking dumbbells into place, because it will become a limiting factor once you get strong enough and get with these bigger dumbbells.
yeah, for sure. And just for comparison, I guess the heaviest I had gone before this, like just in the previous years, even when I was like at my heaviest, I could hit like 75s for like 4 or 5. It always just felt like a balancing act to me because my stability was not the best. And so it was hard to actually target my chest. But this time, it felt great. All the tension was on the chest. I stabilized them pretty well. It wasn't as much of a balancing act. And yeah, like you just said, I'm pretty confident in my setup in getting them up. I really don't feel like I use a ton of energy to get them back and get them up into place. So I'm super confident and happy with that. But yeah, go ahead.
Let me see if I can throw up this screen share. So you guys are gonna have to bear with me here because I don't know what I'm doing. But this would be the start of your push up and your present. And what's the difference here? So it's what, like 15 pounds, 16 pounds, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
All right. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, I see it. That's me, y'all.
Yep. All right. So, yeah, on the left is the start of the push up, and I should have all your details in front of me, but I don't. Um, but yeah, there's about a 15-pound difference here. Do you have, let me see if I can pull this up so we can have the details, because I think I did break this down for you.
Yeah, and the message.
Yeah, I think I did. Okay. So we started this growth phase December 4th of 2025 at 126.84 pounds. And that is the photo on the left. And the photo on the right is current at 142.7 pounds. Okay. So there's a 20-week difference between these two photos and a 15.86-pound gain between the photo, right? And so that ultimately breaks down to a rate of gain per week of 0.793 pounds. Okay, so on average across this 20-week time span, you have gained less than a pound, so about a little bit more than 3/4 of a pound per week, and that is a great place to be at. Because there are certain situations in which your weight can shoot up more than a pound, and really, I would say like a 0.5%, because the pound, it depends on what your body weight is. So, but just to generalize, there may be points in time in which your body weight shoots up more than a pound, and it's fine. Like if you're coming from a super duper lean place, like you've gotten down like really, really lean, those initial weeks, your weight's probably going to come up a little bit faster and you're not going to see a whole lot of visual skewing. But if you're consistently just week after week after week, you're just letting the scale push up more than a pound, you're going to find yourself at a place where you've put on a lot of weight, but it doesn't look great and it's probably not quality, So you really need to stay patient, look at the pictures, let the pictures guide you. Either way, the pictures are kind of the end all be all, right? Because also, like, if your body weight had been coming up at this rate, this completely reasonable, almost perfect rate, and your visuals just kept going sideways, I would have said, hey, hold on, we want to stop this. Your rate of gain is falling into the parameters that I've set out, but your visuals just aren't. They're not. Things are changing for the worse. And so we would pump the brakes in that case. The pictures are really the end all be all, but you know looking at these two photos, 15 pounds gained. What sticks out to you the most? So I'm going to let you kind of break this down. Like, where do you feel like you have made the most progress at?
Shoulders and arms. They yeah, shoulders, arms, like chest. I just look full. I look full, thick, stocky, but what stands out to me the most is the shoulders and arms for sure.
Yeah, shoulders, arms, the legs a little bit too. But that some of that can be like a posing thing. But obviously, the thing that sticks out the most is just the sort of the width from shoulder to shoulder has changed dramatically, and the kind of natty shoulder is always. I guess we should provide some kind of context too. So during this time frame, it went from being natural to pushing up to, what are we at, 400 milligrams of testosterone now?
Yep, 400.
So yeah, nothing crazy. Just first exposure. We started at 250, I think, and then just like worked up from that point, right? And so those kind of natty shoulders you'll see on that rear delt, it just kind of slopes down here. And then, as you get more of this nitrogen retention and this fullness, and everything just kind of expands, and you get more of this roundness on that back shoulder, looking a little bit more capped, and just generally looking wider from shoulder to shoulder, and just denser and fuller all around. So yeah, it's good progress, and you're at a point where you have plenty more runway to keep growing and keep going. So I'm very excited about how this will continue to shape up.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Especially with the way that training is going. Training has always been the most fun part for me. So just keep pushing the weights up and executing, and I'm excited to
That's what
see.
drives everything, man. Like you can throw this stuff in, and if your training just isn't in a good spot, you're not going to really see a whole lot of progress. And on that note, I'll kind of shift to my side. So, you know, I just to catch you up, catch everybody up. The last couple weeks, like I really don't feel like I've made a whole lot of progress, despite like being on relatively high doses for me. And I can see it in my pictures. I can just see it in my physique. Like things are starting to go sideways, and I can also look at the training and say like it's pretty fucking stagnant. Like it's not great. And it all, you know, there were warning signs, but it all kind of seemed to come to a head in these last couple weeks. And the root of it really is that my sleep was just not good enough. Since my partner went back to work and I have my kid full time, I've been burning the candle at both ends, essentially, right? So going to bed at midnight and waking up at 6 a.m. and trying to get my training in the morning before I start taking care of him. And then, sometimes staying up even past midnight to get client work done, because while I have him, it's very hard. Anybody that's been like a stay-at-home parent, man, like the day goes by so fast and they require so much of your attention. So it's hard to get things done. And so I was in a place where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to keep doing the things that I need to do in my work and the things that I want to do in my training. And so I'm just going to eat the shit sandwich on sleep. And my sleep went from consistently at minimum 7 hours, but typically, 8 and sometimes 9 hours. I'm very, very consistent with sleep up to this point, and down to 6 hours. And for a while, that was fine, right? But it just hadn't caught up with me yet. And so it ultimately got to the point where my body just feeling super fucking beat up. I don't even want to train because of how just tired and beat up my body feels. So I'm not really progressing anything in the gym. And ultimately, I could see it in my pictures where like things just started to go sideways, And so ultimately got to the come to Jesus moment, and I said, "Hey, something's got to give. I can't keep doing this, basically, right?" And so what essentially had to give is I just, my partner gets home at 9 o'clock, okay, 9 o'clock at night. And so we like to have some time together. So typically from what is normally like 10 o'clock, after she's gotten settled, I finished up my things, 10 to midnight is our time together. We have a meal together, we watch some TV, we go to sleep, right? So now I'm at the point where I said, hey, I'm just going to have to eat this shit sandwich on our personal time, and I just can't function if I don't get more rest. So now it's like, hey, I want to hang out with you, but I got to go the fuck to bed. And so now I'm just going to bed before she does and getting myself into bed by 11 o'clock at the absolute latest, and sometimes even before that. And I've also scaled my training back. I was training 5 times per week, and now I've peeled it back to 3 to 4. So 3 for sure with an optional 4th day. And it's basically the same split that I was running for the race prep and what I had been running for a long time. So 2 week rotation. So first week is upper, lower, upper. Second week is lower, upper, lower, right? And that allows me plenty of rest in between those training days. The days that I don't train, I'm able to get work done in the morning and sleep in if I don't have work to do. And so it's just something that is, as much as I wanted to train a little bit more, it's just not, there's no point, because I'm not able to progress doing that. And, you have to make sacrifices. Like, this is something that with clients, a lot of people don't really understand how impactful sleep is. And for a lot of people, it is just that. Like, you're going to have to make a sacrifice because it is incredibly important. Sleep it affects so many different things, from your blood sugar. You get a night of shit sleep, your blood sugar, if you're natural, even your hormones, your cortisol, your metabolism, all of these things are directly impacted. And so if you are finding yourself when you're in a place and you're consistently getting less than 7 hours of sleep, if you're serious about making progress, you're probably going to need to make some compromises somewhere and say, hey, well, where can I get to bed earlier? And like me, most people probably have a couple hours at the end of the day where they maybe like to unwind, play video games or watch some TV or whatever. And that time, as much as you enjoy it, it could just be better spent just taking your ass to bed. Do you have any clients that like struggle with sleep or anything like that?
I have a couple clients that their schedule is just completely backwards. They start work at 9 p.m. They'll get off at, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever it is. I have one buddy serious about the gym. He's not a client or anything, but he works 12-hour shifts like all in a row. So his sleep is all over the place. But yeah, I mean, for a little bit, I was only getting 6 hours of sleep, and towards the beginning, you're fine because you don't have all of those nights of 6 hours or 5 hours of sleep kind of banked up. But eventually, like you're gonna feel it. It's gonna start to affect training. You're just digging a hole between hard training sessions, work, and not enough recovery time. Like it's literally that simple.
And the cycle that a lot of people get into, and the one that I found myself in, which I'll kind of segue into my win for this week, getting more sleep, like getting my schedule kind of just set up to, hey, I got to prioritize this. And also the cycle that most people will find themselves in when they're getting less sleep than they need is that they will rely on stimulants to bridge the gap. And that's where I found myself, to where, I would probably, I don't know the milligrams, but it was ridiculous. I was fucking doing caffeine at multiple points in the day. It would be like a ghost at some point in the day, and probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 cups of coffee, at least. And so that works in the short term, but it's crazy because like you're taking this caffeine because you're tired, because you're not getting enough sleep. And also, then after you start consuming caffeine through the day, it starts to negatively affect the sleep you are getting, what little sleep you are getting. And so it just becomes a vicious cycle where now that 6 hours of sleep, like, yeah, you're still getting 6 hours of sleep, but now it's 6 shit hours of sleep. And it doesn't matter if I can drink caffeine and fall asleep. Guess what? It's still fucking up your sleep. You're a human being. You're just like everybody else. Caffeine fucks your sleep up, right? So even if you can fall asleep, it is having detriment to your sleep cycles and the quality of your sleep. So another win for me would be I just pulled the Band-Aid off and I said, hey, I'm getting my caffeine intake down. And so this is here. This is half calf. This is like half caffeine coffee, just 1 cup, and half decaf. So the last couple days, I think we are here Sunday now. So I believe since Thursday or Wednesday, it's been 200 milligrams of caffeine a day. That's it.
Beautiful.
And, with that, I didn't want to go just straight cold turkey because I didn't want to necessarily, and I don't think anything, I think it's kind of overblown, like, the caffeine withdrawal. And I guess it depends for each person and kind of where you were at in your caffeine intake. But I just said, hey, I just need to get it controlled. And so the easiest kind of bar for me to set was to say, hey, you get 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, and that's it. So whether that is, 2 small cups of coffee or 1 ghost, that's it. And also no caffeine, later in the day, because I was doing caffeine all through the day and knowing that it's going to fuck my shit up, but I just falling asleep. I'm falling asleep. I gotta keep going. And so you burn the candle at both ends, and inevitably you're going to crash and burn. The candle is going to fucking burn out a lot faster. So, yeah. What about you? What wins do you got?
Well, real quick before we move on, can you? Because this was something I didn't know until you told me about it when I was drinking too much caffeine. Is what's the half life? How long is it staying in your system?
I want to say 4 to 6 hours. And so the thing about half life is it's not out of your system in 4 to 6 hours. If you take if you drink a 200 milligram Ghost or whatever your energy drink of choice is, the half life of caffeine is, say, 4 hours. So that means that 4 hours after you consume that, it's now 100 milligrams. And then 4 hours after that, it's 50 milligrams. And then 4 hours after that, it's 25 milligrams, right? So it's not just half life gone, right? And
Right.
so you can find yourself in a situation, if you are consuming caffeine all throughout the day, in which you are never clear of caffeine. And that's where the addiction happens. And that's how your sleep gets fucked, because at every single point in time in the day, you have some sort of varying stimulation from high level to, from when you first ingest it, to low level to when it's half lifing out and kind of tapered down in your system, right? And so each reintroduction just brings you back up, and you never come clear off of it.
Right. So just because you can drink caffeine and fall asleep doesn't mean that there's no longer caffeine in your system.
No, absolutely not. Nope. Nope.
Um, yeah, that was perfect because that was something I didn't know until I didn't realize the severity until you educated me on that. But
Yeah.
you just asked me about my win. Mine was the 90 pound dumbbells. Um, yeah, that was
Okay.
pretty much it. Clients are doing well. Shout out Jimmy. He's been on board for 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. He's nailing everything so far. We're gonna start seeing some awesome results in the coming weeks. So I'm super excited. Had some client calls this week as well. Those went well. Getting a couple people onboarded. So
Nice.
yeah, those are my wins. But
Excellent.
yeah, to kind of go into this next segment. So it seems like everyone is preparing for competition, right? Bodybuilding competition. Everyone's getting ready to get on stage. Um, I've never competed, and Kevin's competed. You've competed a couple times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I guess just yeah. So from someone who's never competed before, how I guess what is like your way of approaching competition when you were, when you were competing frequently? What did training look like? What did recovery look like? Um, I guess just everything from
Well, let's maybe narrow it down into one thing at a time. So, like,
sure.
give me one thing that I can touch on.
Well, I mean, just how did you titrate training? From when you decided that you were going to compete in whatever competition, and then as you got closer to show day, how did training look for you? I guess.
Training. So
Yeah.
generally, just like, how do you approach training and prep?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I will say, preface this with saying that, when I had gone through my competition seasons, I was working with a coach that really was not hands on with training. And so now, with kind of having that experience and knowing what I know now, there were a lot of things that maybe not necessarily a lot of things, because I knew my shit, I was on my shit, but I think that now, looking back, like, I wouldn't have not had that shit dialed. Like, I think as a coach, unless you have a client that is very, very experienced, you're probably going to want to have a decent handle on training, at least some of the bigger lifts. But getting into it, yeah, I already knew, like, the big thing is that you do not want to allow your training performance to decline while you're in prep. This is your number one indicator as to whether you are holding onto tissue or not. Okay. And so my approach, even though the coach wasn't handling training, I knew that I wanted to keep everything the same. I'm not going to just change rep ranges and start lifting lighter because I'm trying to lose fat now. No, I want to stay as strong as possible for as long as possible. And a big part of that is your mindset. I think people go into preps or fat loss phases or cuts or whatever you want to call it, and they just have this assumption that you're supposed to get weaker, which is absolute bullshit. If your fat loss is being managed properly and you're not losing weight too quickly and you're not eating too few calories, you should be able for perhaps the first quarter to first half of the fat loss phase to progress loads. You should be able to make progress in the gym. And at some point in time, it's really going to be about hanging on. It's going to be about hanging on to loads and not allowing your weight to fall off of the bar. And so I think where I went wrong in some of my previous approaches is that I was kind of almost masochistic. I had the work harder to get more mindset. And I think that that can really fucking backfire on you when you are inside of 6 weeks out. So I would want to do, drop sets and finishers and just absolutely fucking just empty the tank. And what it ended up doing is just burying me. It ended up, eating into what was already a limited recovery pool. And so if I could go back now, what I would do in that point, and what it leads you to ultimately is the training detriment, right? Because you're discharging your battery so much on these intensifiers that don't actually fucking matter, because you're not at a place where you can build muscle anyways. When you're inside of that 8 to 6 weeks out mark, you're not fucking building any muscle. So it actually makes sense at that point. If anything, if you find yourself like getting into those training sessions and you're like, things are just, you're tired. And, for me, it was like, I'm tired. Good. Fuck it. I'm going to be even more tired. I'm going to go even harder then, the best thing you can do is actually maybe go the other way. It could be intelligent to, if you need to, you have a couple weeks in which you see training performance is dropping off. You're just not, the loads just aren't feeling the same. I would, in that case, say, hey, drop off a set so that you can preserve the quality of what sets you are doing. And these are just arbitrary numbers. Like I can't give specifics without knowing exactly where you're at, but I would say that you would want to drop off volume to be able to preserve the volume that you are doing, right? So if I'm doing 3 sets of dumbbell bench press, right? And I've been doing 100 pounds on these dumbbell bench press for sets of 10. I'm just arbitrary numbers, right? And then 1 week I get in there, and maybe 2 weeks I get in there and I hit the hundreds, and I'm only doing, I don't know, 7 or 8 reps, maybe say 6 or 8. Like the reps have fallen off. Sure. And I would much rather actually just say, okay, I can see reps are falling off. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to peel off a set here. I'm going to peel off a set and just see how that goes, right? So then all the next weeks, I just have a little bit more coming into that, a little bit more that I can give coming into that training session, because I'm not doing so much. And I would just, in general, I would much rather allow reps to fall off to a point. I would much rather allow reps to fall off. So again, going from 10 reps to 8 reps to 9 reps, to 10 reps to 8 reps to 6 reps, right? You started at 10 reps. Now you're at 6 reps, but you're still lifting 100-pound dumbbells. I would much rather do that than to say, hey, my reps are falling off. Now I'm just going to reduce the weight so I can do more reps. I think that is a mistake. I think that you should try to uphold the actual weight that you are lifting, and there's a kind of a end with that, I guess, where like if you're just only able to do singles and doubles, like you're cooked. Like you probably need to drop the weight, you know what I mean? But in general, I would say uphold the training performance in terms of the loads that you're doing, and that as you get closer, the answer is not to do more. It's to do enough that allows you to hang on to the training performance that you have.
So would it be fair to say then it's like, I'm gonna compare this to like a fight, right? Like a fight camp where people are doing all of the hard work at the beginning, and then it comes closer to fight time. You're just sparring, you're just moving, you're doing enough to stay fresh, and that's it. In those end, closer to show times, basically.
As a general concept, you would want to push harder at the start of a prep. It can make a lot more sense to push harder at the start of a prep and potentially try to get ahead than to get behind and have to or try to push harder, closer to show.
Right. Digging that
Yeah,
hole a bit deeper.
100%. Yeah. And so, honestly, like as you get close to stage, some of those training sessions are going to look very vanilla. It's not going to be what what you might see on social media and just these spectacular a lot of times when you get close, you're going in there and you're checking boxes and you're fucking hanging on. You're just hanging on. And anybody that's ever really been that lean understands what I'm saying, because you're fucking tired. And it's just some of those training sessions, you're just like, I just need to check these boxes and I need to get the fuck out of here. You can feel it, And if you allow your, I don't know, ego or that kind of that fucking demon mode to kick in, and you just say, fuck it, I'm just going to go even harder, you're going to dig yourself into a hole. So yeah, and that's something that comes. You go through this experience and you understand that. You can kind of put it into perspective, but you almost have to go through it to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of like a 2-in-1, because one of my other questions was like, how do you balance pushing intensity versus like managing fatigue, basically. And that was like, pretty much just what you talked about. Um, Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, at some point you're going to be fatigued. Like
Yeah.
you're if you're doing it right, you're gonna be fatigued. But if the fatigue gets to the point where your legs are feeling really, really heavy and you just have very little motivation to train and you're super dragging ass and your training performance is going downhill where the loads are dropping off, that's a situation in which either you, if you're self coaching, or the coach needs to recognize and say, hey, we are deep in a hole right now. And if we keep going deeper into this hole, nothing good's going to happen. Your best physique is not going to come from going deeper into that hole. And so typically when you find yourself into that spot, you're going to need to pull back on output, or you're going to need to, or you're going to need to increase your food for a period of time. And sometimes, if you are working with a competition that you've already signed up for and you don't want to push it back, food may not be able to come up. The only thing you may able to be toggled is the output, right? So maybe steps come down, cardio comes down, right? But something needs to happen to allow you to recharge your battery so that you can keep the quality of work higher.
Yeah, you just mentioned cardio. How would you structure your cardio? Both, yeah, steps based. I've heard a couple different. I'm sure there's a ton of different strategies out there. I've heard of just looking at the calories burned on the treadmill and go for a certain goal. How would you do your cardio?
Well, how let me just say how I did it with
Yeah,
the coach that I worked with. It was fucking a mixture of list and hit. And the hit was absolutely fucking brutal. And I think that at a certain point, it was just completely detrimental, completely, because it would just wreck me. And I'm talking like it's a 1 minute on, so it's not true hit, but it's like a minute on, a minute off, and he's got me up 30 minutes of that, a couple times per week, alongside 30, 60, I don't remember, but it's a decent amount of cardio, of list cardio on top of that. And so the hit cardio, man, at a certain point, that would be something, the hit cardio, that would be, in my opinion, best placed at the start of a prep, when energy is still high, when fat stores are still high. Once you get fucking lean, man, and your fats are low and your body fat is low, the hit cardio is just absolutely brutal. And I think for me, I think that's a part of kind of what eats into some of my muscle, because I could come away from some of those hit cardio sessions and kind of smell like ammonia, and that's a sign that like you're burning through some amino acids. So in terms of, that was my experience in terms of like what I had experienced, right? It was a combination of lists and hit, and plenty of it, and steps were not factored. And one of the preps, I did actually end up reporting steps to him, even though he wasn't asking. He would just say, just keep them right where they're at. But I remember, I was doing 17 to 20,000 steps on top of cardio every single day, on top of hit cardio multiple times per week. And now, in terms of how I would structure things for my clients and how I
Yeah.
do structure things for my client, hit cardio, I do not like going over maybe 12 minutes. I think at that point, I'm just trying to play on a little bit of a different energy system than what list cardio does, but I don't want to beat your body up. I do not want to beat your body up. And so hit cardio, I try to use it sparingly, especially as you get closer, because I think that it really can it can eat into your muscle, to be honest with you. And then list cardio, that is something that, yeah, I will lean on that. I think that's a bread and butter for fat loss phases is hit cardio and steps. List cardio and steps. And list cardio, it all just depends on the client and how much they need. Like that, the cardio and the steps, they simply go where they need to go, like for where your body is at. So, the steps, I think that is something that is wildly undervalued by a lot of people, whether coaches or just clients, where they kind of, you think of steps like, oh, it's just steps, right? Like it doesn't have it for a lot of people. It doesn't carry the same weight as like a cardio session, right? Because a cardio session is something that is structured. It's something that kind of seems a little bit more systematic, whereas steps are just accumulated throughout the day, right? So, but the steps, like that is a general quantification for how much you are moving in a day, right? And so, in simple terms, in order to lose fat, you're going to need to eat less and move more. And so, if you're not tracking steps, you could find yourself in a situation where you have your cardio going up, right? So cardio is going up. It was 30 minutes one week, and now it's 45 and then 60. But the steps are going down. And that is something that if you're not measuring steps, subconsciously happens, because as your body fat gets lower, your body, this is not a conscious decision. As your body fat and calories get lower, your body is going to want to move less. It's going to try to preserve energy. And so if you allow your step count to fall down while you are scaling up the cardio and dropping down food, you end up with a net neutral result. You're going up this way and coming down this way, and it's like, fuck, this is not making sense. So yeah, steps are, I use a combination of all of them. Hit cardio, list cardio, and steps. Absolutely. I think they all really are valuable tools. I think they all work best together. The big one, you could honestly do a fat loss phase purely on steps if you have the time for it. That's a consideration with step count, is that it's not structured. It's not this thing where you're like, okay, I see it on the plan. It's 30 minutes, 5 times per week. No, steps are all throughout the day. So that's, and if you get a step count that's 20K, it's going to take some time to accumulate those steps. So that is something that needs to be factored. Maybe the person that I'm working with, they just don't have the availability for that time to get those steps in. And maybe we lean on, the cardio a little bit more. It all just kind of depends.
Yeah. It's just like context dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And side note, yeah, hit sucks. I remember at the height of one of the cuts that you and I were doing, it was like, I think I was at like 12 minutes or something, of like a minute on, 2 minutes off, or a minute on, minute off, whatever. Yeah, that's brutal. Can I ask you about how you would do your gear usage, or how it was done for you? I guess if that was a factor that your coach was handling or that you were handling, I guess.
That's another one that wasn't really closely handled. So Justin Harris, I generally had good experience with Justin Harris, but I think that a lot of the way that he coaches is kind of templatized, if that's a word, and cookie cutter, if you will. And I think that can work, but ultimately there's a lot of things that he just wasn't really specific on. I didn't like that the training wasn't dialed in. He gave me like some of his like training ebooks or something like that, but it wasn't specific to me. The gear was just general ideas, and he was in one of the emails that he sends out when you onboard, he basically says like, if you want to do real deal bodybuilding, that happens between 2 and 3 grams of gear. And then he, formats like a general, like, this is what I would do for a primary anabolic, which is, testosterone. And then I would use these secondary anabolics. And, he formats it for prep and formats it for off season. So, I think where I really went wrong in one of my preps was that I was still doing competitive powerlifting at this time. And I had gone through a competitive powerlifting off season in which I competed, and I was blasting up while I was competed, had a very good outcome. It was my best meet, totaled 1857 or something like that, right? Really great outcome. But on the back end of that, I turned around and went right into prep, and there was not really any downtime with the gear. And so, on that turnaround, right, my body was tired because I had been really training fucking hard. I was super strong. Gear had been high, right? And so on the turnaround, when we got into prep, there was not really a whole lot of downtime from the gear. And so I'll never forget it, because I went from one of the first adjustments that he did when we got into that first week of prep was going from 3 high days a week. And I was banging like 900 grams of carbs on these high days. So they were substantial. They were big fucking, high calorie high days, and dropped down to 1. And then cardio was pushed up a little bit, and nothing really happened with my body weight. And I was like, how the fuck is this possible? Yeah. Like, how is it possible that I cut all these fucking carbs out and moved cardio up and nothing fucking happened? And, what, in a nutshell, what it was is just my body was tired. My body was tired and unresponsive. That's just what it was, right? So now, like, if I knew I were getting into a competition prep, and what I corrected after that on my own is like, hey, I need to have some downtime before I get into prep. And that downtime, maybe it's 6 to 8 weeks, maybe it's longer, but like 6 to 8 weeks at minimum, in which, the gear is brought down, just testosterone, right? Just bring down to testosterone, and the dose you bring it down to kind of depends on where you are at, right? But it could be anywhere from, say, 200 milligrams a week to 500. Depends on where you are at. And during that time, you just let your body rest. You let your body rest, and you would be wise at that point in time to correct any sort of skewing that you have present on your blood work, so that you can come into prep knowing that you're about to push the gear, right? Knowing that you're about to push your body. You can come into prep on a low gear load and have somewhere to go with that, right? And have a response from that, because you have not been up there, right? And your body can be fresh and healthy and respond to the cardio and respond to the diet. I think that is a huge thing. You do not really want to go from blasting off season and then turn right around into blasting competition drugs. I think that there needs to be a period of time in between those things. But as you go through the competition prep, I would probably have some sort of titration in place, and I'd probably be a little bit more aggressive. It wouldn't be like adding in like 100 milligrams, a week or something like that. But, once I get into prep, I would, have an initial bump. And then somewhere through it, maybe 4 weeks after, I might have another bump. And then ultimately, by the time that I'm maybe 10 weeks out or something like that, I would probably, 8 to 10 weeks out, I'd probably want to be on peak loads. But just general format, like, everybody pretty much does the same shit, to be honest with you. Everybody is pretty much doing the same shit, unless you can't find the shit that everybody's doing. And it's usually going to be test, Masteron, Tren, and an oral thrown in the last, say, 4 to 6 weeks, right? So it's test, mass, Tren, or Primo, but basically a testosterone, an injectable DHT, whether that is Primobolan or Masteron, and then a oral DHT, which is usually going to be Winstrol or Anavar, closer to the show. That's what everybody does. That's just what it is. There's some people, like outliers, that might use like a NPP or Equipoise or something if they can't get their hands on, on the DHTs, but that is generally what everybody does. And the doses just depend on the person,
Yeah. It sounds like pretty much everyone does the same things, because I was listening to a podcast today, Dom Kuza, and he was even talking about, because it's like it's a deadlined thing, so you start gear with a little bit of aggression, starting a bit higher, or titrate higher a bit quicker.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so you had just said something as well that I wanted to ask you, but what would be the benefit of hopping on, like, and he mentioned this as well. He literally said Anavar, an oral for 4 weeks. What's the, I guess, what's the point of that? Just for
Two.
like a smaller period of time, like 4 weeks, you know?
Two. And that 4 weeks is usually the 4 weeks in front of leading up to the show. There's two things that happen with when you introduce an oral steroid like Anavar or Winstrol. Number one, there is a cosmetic effect that happens. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. When you plug in, if you have real Anavar or real Winstrol, you are going to see a cosmetic effect happen if your body fat is low enough. You are going to look fuller. You are going to look harder, period. If you got real shit, right? Anybody that's ever taken real Anavar or Winstrol can tell you that. There is a cosmetic effect that happens. And obviously, we are trying to get a full hard appearance when we get on stage. So that's first and foremost. Second to that is also that kind of 4 to maybe even 6 weeks. I don't know that I would bring in orals like 8 weeks out, unless maybe you were just on a couple days here and there. But that kind of is lending in what I'm going to say. Training performance. So those weeks, those say 4 to 8 weeks before the show, those are the weeks in which your training is going to be the most delicate, in which you are more likely to run into training performance coming down. Okay. And so you can use this oral steroid as a training performance, as an acute training performance boost. You plug in some Anavar before you go train, you're going to have stronger contractions. You're going to fucking feel stronger. And so it's twofold. It's the cosmetic benefit, and then it's also just you implementing these things to preserve your training performance at a time at which it's food is low, cardio is high, and you need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So it's not to, you can't expect to make any gains, I guess, at that point if you're super depleted. Just introducing, a steroid, and from 4 weeks
No.
out, like, it's not gonna make you bigger,
So this is, I mean, the
You're not gonna
is it
grow,
real
like
contractile tissue? Is it real contractile tissue? No. But can it lead to
right,
a more full appearance, especially while you're in the gym?
sure.
Yeah, but that's not real. This is all cosmetic. It's
Cosmetic.
not necessarily real tissue that you're going to keep into your off season. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was just clarifying, like you're not gonna expect to put on real, yeah, like real size, like,
The only way that somebody's going to grow in a competition prep is if you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing in the off season. That's it. The only way you grow into the show is if you were an asshole in the off season and you came into the prep fucked up, where you were detrained, and you just weren't in a good spot, where you weren't crossing your T's, dotting your I's. And so it can say, oh my God, I grew into the show, but look at the start point. Like, you know what I mean? That's the only way.
yeah,
If you come into the competition prep and you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're not going to have, growing into the show. I think you're just making up lost ground in the off season. That you're just making up making up for a loosey goosey off season. That's it. So it doesn't matter if you're fucking natural or enhanced. Like, if you don't have, like, you're not growing 6 weeks out, period.
yeah.
You're just not.
Outside of, I mean, outside of like the gear usage and stuff, would you take, like, what would your supplementation look like? Would you do anything for cortisol? Would you do anything for sleep, digestion? What would that look like? Or what did it look like?
Digestion for a lot of people is just going to be, when you get lean, there's just not a lot of water that can stay in your body. So constipation is something that probably a lot of people are going to experience. I know I did at one point. And, you can do the fiber, you can do the water, and at some point, like, your body is just hanging on to, your body is soaking up all that fucking water out of that food, dude. And it's just, when you pass this stuff, it's like, boom, just that little guy right there. But yeah, like, you can try, you can do the fiber. I think it just kind of comes with the territory. And I'm talking about, like, when you get really, really fucking lean, Sleep, I don't know that I would do anything different that I wasn't already doing previously. So I mean, maybe it would be melatonin acutely, and then magnesium glycinate before bed. But tren, like when you introduce tren, like you're probably going to have, depending on how much you're using in your individual response, you're probably going to have some sort of a shift in your sleep quality. And so, all of these little like kind of over the counter supplement things, they can be a little bit helpful, but it kind of just like comes with the territory. You can, if you're really in the weeds with it, and you can do some sort of pharmaceutical sleep aid. I don't like the idea of that. I don't want to mess around with that. And so it just kind of becomes a point like it is what it is. Do what you can, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then what was the other one? Digestion, sleep, and
I had said anything for like cortisol.
not directly. And that's something too. Like, do you really actually know if your cortisol is elevated? Like, if you want to go and get blood work done and see that, then you could. But I don't. That's just not. Yeah, I don't
Kind
have a good
of
answer for that because
factor.
it's not. Yeah, that's like people say like I'm inflamed, and it's like, well, did you check your CRP? Like, how inflamed are you? Like,
Right.
and
Like, what does
a
it
part
mean?
of prep
Yeah.
too is like your body is stressed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
you might be able to throw some specific supplements in to combat cortisol, but I don't have a good answer for that.
I gotcha. Um, that was pretty much all that I can. I know there's a bit of a rebound period, right? So like you always see these pictures after people compete of them eating these huge meals, and it can go on for days, weeks. I guess what would a rebound look like? Is there a right or a wrong way to do it? Um, just as far as food goes, as far as getting into training after a show, that type of stuff.
So let's clarify what a rebound is. So a rebound, because it can be like a blanket statement, and for some people it can mean some things, and for other people it can mean other things. But like generally, when people say rebound, they think of what it is that it is a period of time in which you can, like I was talking about earlier, where you can gain quite a bit of weight, right? And you just super compensate. Your body just sucks this food in. Your muscles get very, very full, and you can find yourself at a place where you are at at or above your off-season weight and leaner, right? So I've seen it. It's a real thing. Um, you know, uh, I think it's kind of a unicorn in some ways, because I don't think that can be easily replicated. And I think a part of what a real deal rebound, in which you slingshot and you make basically all of your off-season progress in a matter of 8 weeks, 10 weeks. I think one of the things that needs to be in place for that to happen is you have to be wildly over dieted. I think that you need to be completely stripped the fuck out, in a deep, deep hole, like glutes peeled, stripped out, like you're the leanest you've ever been. There's no fucking fat on your body. And I think there needs to be some muscle loss in place. And I think when you find yourself in that position and you go into a rebound in which you treat that rebound, the food, like a competition prep, and you're not doing off-plan meals, and everything is meticulously controlled. And I think when there's some gear left back in, it doesn't necessarily have to be prep high, but I think that is the situation in which you can experience a real deal rebound. But that's not going to line up for most people. It's not something I've been able to do because I haven't really been that lean. You know what I mean? So for, and then on the other side, I go, okay, rebound, like reverse, like you're reversing, like what are you doing in the weeks after the show, right?
Right.
That you're not trying to like slingshot because maybe you didn't get to that point, right? It's just a matter of like, I think either way, you really need to treat the 8 to 10 weeks after your competition prep like a competition prep, like a continuation of the competition prep, because those weeks after your prep is over, they can either set you up for a really productive off season or completely destroy it. If you let yourself get fat And this really, when I say let yourself, if you eat like an asshole, if you are having too many off plan meals because you don't feel the pressure of the show anymore, you are going to get fat. You are going to accumulate fat at an accelerated rate. And if you allow that to happen, you're just going to be going into your off season in not a great spot. And so I think, whether you're trying to legitimately rebound or come off of, the back end of a prep, either way, I think that there's maybe in the first 5 days after, and really not even 5 days, I think there should be like maybe a couple days after the show in which you eat kind of freely what you want within reason. It can't be a binge fest. It just can't be. But you have some opportunity for some off-plan meals to catch up with friends and family and stuff. And then after that, you just get back on your normal plan. And what that normal plan is, it just kind of depends. I don't think that you want to try to stay hyper lean for a long period of time. You just want, because ultimately, like if you're staying super, super lean, nothing productive is happening there. You're not building muscle there. So it really just becomes a matter of getting your food and your body fat back to a point at which you can have productive training. And it's just all about doing that in a controlled fashion that limits fat gain. And the specifics of it, I can't give it because it's just different for every single person,
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty much all I had. I know we're coming up on an hour. Was there anything that we didn't touch on or that I didn't ask that you want to touch on?
No, we've got some questions, but I think I'll probably just clip that into a solo one because I do want to get those answered before next week. So I think we covered a lot of good stuff here, and maybe we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in again. Put in the comments after you guys like and subscribe and share it. What a win you guys had this week. What are you guys? It could be training related. It can be non-training related. But just let us know. I love hearing good news from people. So
Yeah, bring us something positive.
yes, please. And yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thank you guys.
Peace.
See ya.